I didn't think much of it at first. Looking back now, that's probably the biggest mistake I made that night. Because when you're alone in the middle of the woods, miles away from the nearest town, there are certain things you should never ignore. And one of them is footsteps outside your cabin at 2 in the morning. But before that happened, everything felt normal, almost peaceful. It was late October when I rented the cabin, a small wooden place deep in the forests of northern Idaho. The kind of place people go to when they want to disappear for a few days. No phone signal, no neighbors, just trees stretching in every direction. At the time, that sounded perfect to me. Work had been stressful and I needed somewhere quiet to clear my head. The drive there took almost 4 hours. The further I got from the city, the narrower the roads became. Eventually, the highway turned into a thin mountain road surrounded by dense forest, tall pine trees everywhere. By the time I reached the cabin, the sun was already starting to set. The place looked exactly like the photos online. A small porch, gravel driveway, and a single trail leading into the forest behind the house. The owner had left the key under a rock near the steps. Inside, the cabin was simple: a couch, a fireplace, a small kitchen, and a bedroom down a short hallway. Nothing fancy, but it felt comfortable. The kind of place where you could sit for hours just listening to the wind outside. At least, that's what I thought. I unpacked my bag, made some coffee, and stepped out onto the porch to watch the sunset. The forest looked beautiful in the fading light, golden sunlight slipping between the trees, long shadows stretching across the ground. For a while, I just sat there quietly. Then something strange happened. The wind stopped, completely. One moment the trees were swaying gently, the next moment everything went still. And with the wind gone, the silence felt heavier. I remember noticing something odd about that silence. There were no animal sounds, no birds, no insects, nothing, just complete stillness. At first I figured it was normal. Maybe animals just didn't come near the cabin. But after a few minutes, the silence started to feel uncomfortable, like the forest was holding its breath. That feeling stayed with me even after I went back inside. Around 10 that night, I made some instant noodles and watched a movie on my laptop. Everything seemed normal again. Almost. But every now and then I would hear small sounds outside, branches shifting, gravel crunching faintly in the distance. Each time I paused the movie and listened, and each time, the sound stopped. Eventually I convinced myself it was just animals moving around in the forest. It had to be. Still, before going to bed, I double-checked that the front door was locked, just in case. The bedroom was small, with one window facing the forest behind the cabin. Before turning off the light, I glanced outside. The trees were barely visible in the darkness, just tall shapes standing in the night. Something about the view made me uneasy, like someone could be standing out there, just beyond the edge of the light, watching. I told myself that was ridiculous. Then I turned off the lamp and lay down. For a while, everything was quiet, the kind of quiet that slowly pulls you towards sleep. And eventually, I drifted off. I don't know how long I was asleep, maybe an hour, maybe less. But suddenly I woke up. My eyes opened instantly, like my body had sensed something before my mind could understand it. For a moment, I just lay there in the dark, listening. The cabin was silent. Then I heard it, a faint sound outside. Crunch. I held my breath. A few seconds passed. Then it came again. Crunch. Footsteps, slow footsteps moving across gravel. At first I thought it might be a deer wandering near the cabin, but the steps were too heavy, too deliberate. And they weren't moving away, they were moving closer. The sound stopped right outside the wall of my bedroom. I sat up slowly in bed, barely breathing. Whoever it was standing just outside the window, completely still, waiting. Several seconds passed. Then the footsteps started again, but this time they moved toward the front of the cabin. I listened carefully as the sound circled the house. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Each step slow and controlled, like someone taking their time. Then the footsteps reached the porch. The wooden boards creaked, and everything went quiet. For almost a full minute. I remember staring toward the bedroom door, trying to convince myself I was imagining things. Then it happened. 3 slow knocks echoed through the cabin. Knock, knock, knock. Not loud, just enough to met. I couldn't move. I just sat there in bed staring at the bedroom door, listening to that handle turn halfway, then stop. For a second, I thought maybe whoever was outside had realized the door was locked. Then I heard something even worse. A soft laugh. Not loud, not exaggerated, just a quiet, breathy little laugh right outside the front door, like whoever was standing there knew I was inside, knew I was awake, and was enjoying it. I felt this cold rush go through my entire body. Up until that moment, I had still been trying to explain it away. Some lost hiker, some drunk guy from town, some random person at the wrong cabin. But that laugh erased all of that. Whoever was outside wasn't confused. He was there for me. I slowly reached for my phone on the nightstand. No signal, not a single bar. I already knew service out there was bad, but I opened my contacts anyway and stared at the screen like somehow that would change things. Nothing. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. Then the porch creaked again. A slow step, then another. He was moving away from the front door. For one brief second, I actually felt relief. Maybe he was leaving. Maybe he had decided to move on. Then the footsteps changed direction. They started coming toward the side of the cabin, toward the bedroom window. I slid off the bed as quietly as I could and crouched beside it, keeping my eyes fixed on the pale outline of the window. The footsteps stopped just outside, right there, only a few feet away from me. I don't think I breathed for 10 full seconds. Then I heard a faint scratching sound against the glass. Not loud, just enough to make my skin crawl. Like someone dragging a fingernail slowly across the window. From one side to the other. I stayed frozen. The scratching stopped. And then a voice came through the glass. Soft, calm, almost friendly. I know you're in there. I felt every muscle in my body lock up. It was a man's voice, low and steady. Not angry, not rushed. That was the worst part. He sounded completely relaxed. Like this was normal for him, like he'd done it before. I backed away from the window and moved into the hallway, trying not to make a sound. My heart was beating so hard it felt like it was vibrating through my ribs. The cabin suddenly felt tiny, too small. One front door, one bedroom window, one back window in the kitchen. That was it. Nowhere to go. The voice came again, still quiet, still patient. You don't have to hide. I grabbed the fireplace poker from beside the living room hearth. It was the only thing in the cabin that could even remotely be used as a weapon. It felt pathetic in my hands. Thin, lightweight, useless. But it was better than nothing. I stood in the dark living room listening for movement outside. At first, there was nothing. Then I heard footsteps again, this time moving toward the back of the cabin. A second later, the kitchen window gave a soft thud. Then another. Not hard enough to shatter the glass, just little testing hits, like he was checking how strong it was. I don't know what made me do it, but I stepped closer and looked toward the kitchen. The window above the sink was just barely visible in the dark, and for a split second I saw a face outside it. Pale, still. A man staring in. I jumped back so fast I almost slipped. He didn't move. He just stood there with one hand resting against the glass, looking into the cabin like he was studying the place, studying me. I couldn't make out every detail of his face, but I could see enough. He looked thin, middle-aged maybe, hollow cheeks, dark clothes, no expression at all, just those eyes, locked on the house. Then slowly he smiled. I stumbled backward into the hallway, gripping the poker so tightly my hand hurt. At that point, one thought finally cut through the panic. I had to get out of there. Not stay, not hide, leave. The bathroom had a tiny frosted window, but it was too small to crawl through. The bedroom window was where he'd just been standing. That left the back door near the kitchen. If he was still at the kitchen window, maybe I could rush the back door and make it into the woods before he got around the house. It sounded insane, but staying inside felt worse. I moved slowly toward the kitchen, every step careful, every breath controlled. The window above the sink was empty now. I couldn't see him. That somehow scared me more. I reached the back door and wrapped my hand around the knob. For 1 second, I just stood there listening. Nothing. Then, from the other side of the door, 3 soft knocks answered me. I nearly cried out. He was right there, standing on the other side. He had somehow moved from the window to the back door without making a sound. And then I heard him speak again. On. I didn't notice the boot prints when I first arrived. At least, not in a way that made me stop and think about them. When I unpacked earlier that afternoon, I had seen a few faint muddy marks on the wooden floor beneath the bedroom window. I remember assuming they were probably mine, or maybe left from the last renter. Cabins in the woods get dirty. People track mud inside all the time, so I ignored it. But standing there in the living room, hearing the slow weight of someone walking across the roof above me, those prints suddenly came back to my mind with a completely different meaning. Because if they weren't mine, then someone had already been inside that cabin before I arrived. The ceiling creaked again. Another slow step. Then another, directly above the bedroom. I felt my stomach twist. The bedroom window. That was the one window that didn't lock properly. I had noticed it earlier when I tried sliding it shut. At the time, it seemed like a small issue. Now it felt like a death sentence. I ran down the hallway as quietly as I could, trying to reach the bedroom before he did. The entire cabin groaned as the footsteps above me shifted position. Then the roof creaked loudly, right above the window. I pushed into the bedroom and immediately saw the problem. The window was open. Not wide, just a few inches. Enough for cold air to slip inside, and enough for someone to force it the rest of the way up. I rushed forward and shoved the window down with both hands. For a second it held. Then I heard fingers scraping against the glass from the outside. I looked up. His face was right there, only inches away from mine. Pale skin, dark, hollow eyes, and that same calm smile. He pushed upward again. The window lifted another inch. I shoved down harder, using all my weight. For a moment, we were both frozen like that. Me pushing down from inside, him forcing it up from outside. Then he spoke again. Quiet, almost amused. You weren't supposed to wake up. The words hit me like ice water. Before I could react, he suddenly slammed his shoulder into the window frame. The wood cracked. The window jumped upward several inches. His hand shot through the opening. I stumbled back, grabbing the lamp from the nightstand and swinging it as hard as I could. The base smashed against his wrist. He hissed and pulled his hand back. That was my chance. I didn't think. I just ran, down the hallway, through the living room, straight for the front door. The couch was still pressed against it. I shoved it aside with everything I had and unlocked the deadbolt. Behind me, I heard glass shatter. The bedroom window finally breaking open. He was inside. I yanked the door open and sprinted out into the cold night. The forest swallowed me immediately, branches snapping under my feet as I ran blindly between the trees. I didn't care where I was going, I just needed distance. Behind me, I heard the cabin door slam open, then footsteps, fast. He was chasing me. The darkness in the forest was almost complete, broken only by thin strips of moonlight between the branches. Every few steps, I nearly tripped over roots or rocks hidden in the dirt. But adrenaline kept pushing me forward. I could hear him gaining ground, his breathing, his footsteps, steady, controlled, like he knew these woods better than I ever could. I kept running until the trees started thinning out ahead of me. A narrow dirt road appeared through the darkness, the same road I had driven in on earlier that day. I burst out of the forest and stumbled onto the road, waving my arms desperately even though there were no headlights anywhere. But then something happened that I still can't explain. The footsteps behind me stopped. Completely. I turned around slowly, expecting him to come charging out of the trees. But the forest behind me was empty, silent again, like nothing had ever been there. I stood there for almost a full minute, staring into the darkness between the trees. Nothing moved. No branches, no footsteps, no voice. Eventually, I started walking down the road, not even sure which direction I was going. After about 15 minutes, I saw headlights approaching in the distance, a pickup truck from the nearby town. The driver stopped when he saw me in the road. He said I looked like I had seen a ghost. I probably did. He drove me straight to the sheriff's office. I told them everything. About the man, about the cabin, about the chase through the forest. 2 deputies drove back with me immediately. But when we arrived at the cabin, everything was quiet. The front door was open. The couch was pushed aside. Inside, the bedroom window was shattered exactly the way I described. But the strange part wasn't the broken window, or the footprints outside. It was what the owner told the deputies when they called him later that night. Apparently, the cabin hadn't been